When the hotel staff upgraded my room for free and whispered, "Don't open the door after midnight, I'm being serious," I thought she was joking. At 2:47 a.m., someone knocked. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I looked through the peephole and saw something that made me understand why that room had been empty for 6 months. What I discovered the next morning revealed a pattern of disappearances that the hotel had been covering up for years. My name is Lauren Hayes. I'm 29 years old, and I'm a travel blogger who stays in hotels across the country about 200 nights a year. I thought I'd seen everything. Bedbugs, sketchy neighborhoods, weird guests, you name it. But nothing prepared me for the Grandview Hotel in Savannah, Georgia, and the room on the 4th floor that no one was supposed to be in. The warning from the front desk clerk wasn't a superstition or a prank. It was a desperate attempt to protect me from something the hotel management knew about, but refused to acknowledge. Before we get into this, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love hearing from you all. I'm a full-time travel blogger. I run a website and YouTube channel where I review hotels, restaurants, and tourist attractions all over the United States. I started doing this 4 years ago after I quit my corporate marketing job in Chicago. I was so tired of the office politics, the fluorescent lighting, sitting in the same chair staring at the same computer screen every single day. I wanted freedom, wanted to see the country, wanted to build something that was actually mine. So I took the leap, started the blog, and never looked back. My life now is completely different from what most people consider normal. I'm on the road constantly, rarely staying in the same city for more than 3 or 4 nights. I don't have a traditional home anymore. My apartment in Chicago is sublet to a friend, and I just keep a small storage unit with off-season clothes and personal stuff I don't need while traveling. Everything I own that matters fits in 2 suitcases and a backpack. I make my income from affiliate links when people book hotels through my site, from sponsorships with travel companies, and from ads on my content. It's not making me rich, but it pays my bills and gives me the freedom to wake up in a different city every week. My parents think my lifestyle is completely reckless. They live in Minnesota, and they're always asking when I'm going to get a real job and settle down. My younger sister, Beth, is more supportive. She's a teacher in Minneapolis with a much more traditional life, but she lives through my adventures. We video chat twice a week, and she's always asking for travel recommendations and wanting to hear my crazy hotel stories. She loves the drama of my life, even though she'd never want to live this way herself. I've been single for about 2 years now. It's hard to maintain a relationship when you're never in one place for more than a few days. I dated a guy I met in Denver last year, and we tried to make it work long distance, but it just fell apart. I'm honestly okay being on my own most of the time. I've gotten used to solo dinners, talking to myself in empty hotel rooms, being my own company. I've also become an expert at reading hotels. I can tell you which chains are reliable, which independent properties are hidden gems, and which places are covering up serious problems with good marketing and pretty photos. The night that changed everything was a Tuesday in late November. I'd driven from Charleston to Savannah for a 3-day stay. I was planning to review several hotels and restaurants in the historic district for my blog. I'd booked a standard room at the Grandview Hotel, a mid-range property that advertised itself as having historic charm at an affordable price. The hotel was this converted mansion from the 1890s, 4 stories tall, with really beautiful Victorian architecture. Like every old building in Savannah, it claimed to be haunted. That's basically a requirement for marketing in that city. I don't believe in ghosts. I've stayed in supposedly haunted hotels all over the country and never experienced anything I couldn't explain. Creaky floors, old pipes making noise, drafts from bad windows. That's all it ever is. Tourists hear these normal sounds in old buildings and their imaginations run wild. I always figured the ghost stories were just good marketing to attract people who want a spooky experience. I arrived at the Grandview around 6 p.m., tired from the 3-hour drive, and looking forward to a hot shower and some room service. From the outside, the hotel looked really impressive. Beautiful Victorian architecture, a perfectly maintained lawn, these old-fashioned gas lamps flickering by the entrance like something from a historical movie. Inside, The lobby was decorated with antique furniture and old photographs of Savannah from the 1800s. Very atmospheric, very Southern Gothic, exactly what tourists expect when they visit Georgia. It looked like the kind of place that would photograph beautifully for my blog. I walked up to the front desk where a young woman was working the evening shift. She looked to be in her early 20s with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, pale skin, and these tired eyes that told me she'd been on her feet for hours. Her name tag read Angela. I gave her my name and reservation confirmation, expecting the usual quick check-in process. Angela typed on her computer for a moment, frowned slightly at the screen, then looked up at me with a smile that seemed a bit forced. "Ms. Hayes, I see you booked our standard queen room on the second floor. However, we're pretty quiet tonight, and I'd like to offer you a complimentary upgrade to one of our deluxe rooms on the fourth floor. It's a much larger space with a better view, and there's no additional charge at all." I was surprised, but pleased. Free upgrades are pretty rare, especially at mid-range hotels like this one. Usually you only get upgraded if you're a loyalty member or if there's been some kind of problem with your original room. Wow, that's really generous. Thank you so much. Is there a catch? I meant it as a lighthearted joke, but something flickered across Angela's face. It looked like nervousness, maybe even fear, but it passed so quickly I thought I'd imagined it. "No catch at all," she said, her voice steady, but her hands shaking slightly as she prepared my keycards. "We just want to make sure our guests have the best possible experience." Angela printed out the keycards and the information sheet with my room number and Wi-Fi password. She held them for a moment before handing them to me, and I noticed her glancing around the empty lobby like she was checking to see if anyone was watching us. Then she leaned forward slightly and lowered her voice to barely above a whisper. "Ms. Hayes, the room I'm giving you is 412. It really is a beautiful room, one of our best. But I need to tell you something important, and I need you to take this seriously. Don't open your door after midnight. No matter what you hear out in the hallway, no matter who knocks or what they say, do not open that door." I actually laughed, thinking this was part of the hotel's whole haunted mansion marketing thing. Savannah hotels love playing up the ghost stories for tourists. It's basically part of the experience. "Okay, got it. Is this like a Bloody Mary situation? Do I have to say something 3 times in the mirror?" I was smiling, expecting her to smile back and maybe tell me the legend behind the haunted room. But Angela's expression didn't change. Her face remained completely serious, and her eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my smile fade. "I am not joking with you. I'm being completely serious right now. After midnight, do not open that door for any reason." I mean it. The way she said it, the genuine fear in her voice, sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't part of a fun ghost story experience. This was a real warning from someone who was genuinely frightened. "Angela, are you saying the hotel isn't safe? Is there a security issue I should be worried about? Because if there is, I need to know." Angela glanced toward a closed office door behind the desk that I assumed belonged to the hotel manager. She bit her lip, clearly struggling with how much to tell me. "The hotel is safe as long as you follow that one rule. Room 412 has been empty for 6 months. Management keeps it listed as being held for renovations, but that's not the truth. The last guest who stayed in that room opened her door at 2 a.m. when someone knocked on it. She disappeared that same night. Just vanished. The police investigated everything. The hotel cooperated fully, showed them all our security footage and key card logs. But that woman was never found. Her car was still in our parking lot the next morning. All her luggage was still in the room. Her purse, her phone, her wallet, everything. But she was gone. My stomach dropped. This couldn't be real. If that's actually true, why are you putting me in that room? That makes no sense. Angela looked pained, like this was tearing her apart inside. "Because my manager is making me. We have a big tour group checking in tomorrow and we need all the second and third floor rooms for them. You're traveling alone, and management decided that if we put someone in 412 for a few nights, it'll prove the room is fine and break whatever bad luck is attached to it. They think the disappearance was just a weird coincidence and that the story is hurting our business. They told me to offer it as a free upgrade so you wouldn't complain about being moved." She pushed the keycards across the counter toward me, her hand trembling slightly. "I'm only warning you because I have a conscience. I can't sleep at night knowing I put someone in danger without at least trying to protect them. The room really is nice, and you'll probably be completely fine. Just please, whatever happens after midnight, whatever you hear, don't open that door." I stood there in the lobby holding those key cards, my mind racing through my options. Part of me wanted to refuse the upgrade entirely and insist on staying in my original second-floor room. That would be the smart, safe choice. But another part of me, the part that had built a career on investigating hotels and telling stories, was curious. Was this an elaborate prank? Was Angela being overly dramatic about something that had a rational explanation? And honestly, if there was a real story here about a woman disappearing from a hotel room, that was exactly the kind of thing my audience would want to know about. What if I just stay in my original room instead? "Can you switch me back to 208? Angela nodded quickly. "Yes, I can absolutely do that. I'd actually prefer that, to be honest. Let me just cancel this upgrade and reissue your original room keys." She reached for the key cards, but I pulled them back. I'd made my decision. "No, I'll take the upgrade, but I promise you I'll be careful. I won't open the door after midnight." Angela looked relieved and heartbroken at the same time. "Thank you for listening to me. Most people would think I'm crazy. Just please remember what I said." I took the elevator to the 4th floor, pulling my suitcase behind me and thinking about everything Angela had told me. The hallway was dimly lit with these old-fashioned wall sconces that created more shadows than actual light. Room 412 was at the very end of the corridor, the last door on the right. I unlocked it and stepped inside, and I have to admit I was immediately impressed. The room was gorgeous, spacious and beautifully decorated with genuine antique furniture, a massive 4-poster bed, a sitting area with a velvet couch, and huge windows that looked out over the historic district. It was easily twice the size of the standard room I'd booked, and it looked like it should cost at least $300 a night. I couldn't understand why they'd keep this room empty for 6 months. If what Angela said was true, they were losing serious money by not renting it out. I did what I always do when I check into a new hotel. I inspected everything thoroughly. I checked the bathroom, looked in the closet, checked under the bed, tested the locks on the door and windows. Everything seemed completely normal. The room was clean and well-maintained. There were no signs of anything sinister or unusual. I took photos for my blog, noting the beautiful period details and the unexpected upgrade I'd received. Around 8 o'clock, I ordered room service and ate dinner while sitting on the couch editing photos on my laptop. I tried to focus on my work, but I kept thinking about Angela's warning. Don't open the door after midnight. And that story about a woman who disappeared after opening her door at 2 a.m. It sounded like an urban legend, the kind of creepy story that hotel workers tell each other to pass the time during boring night shifts. But Angela's fear had seemed so genuine, so real. By 11 o'clock, I was exhausted from the drive. I got ready for bed, brushed my teeth, changed into my pajamas. Before climbing into bed, I walked over to the door and double-checked all the locks. I engaged the deadbolt and put the chain lock in place. Then I took a chair from the sitting area and wedged it under the door handle as an extra precaution. I felt slightly ridiculous doing it, like I was overreacting to a ghost story. But Angela's terrified expression kept flashing in my mind, and I decided being too careful was better than not being careful enough. I set my phone alarm and climbed into the incredibly comfortable bed. Despite everything, despite the warning and the strange story about a disappearance, I fell asleep within minutes. The bed was that comfortable and I was that tired. At 2:47 a.m., I woke up to the sound of knocking. 3 slow, deliberate knocks on my door. Knock, knock, knock. Each one was spaced several seconds apart, echoing through the silent hotel corridor. My eyes shot open and my heart immediately started pounding. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and looked at the time. 2:47 a.m., just minutes away from the time Angela had mentioned, the time the other woman had received knocking before she disappeared. I stayed completely still in bed, barely breathing, listening. The hallway outside my room was silent. No footsteps, no voices, no sound of anyone walking away. Just complete silence. Then it came again. Knock, knock, knock. Same slow, deliberate pattern. Same spacing between each knock. This wasn't someone at the wrong room knocking quickly and then realizing their mistake. This was intentional. I slipped out of bed as quietly as possible, my bare feet silent on the carpet. I crept toward the door, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. Every horror movie I'd ever seen was playing in my head. All those scenes where the person looks through the peephole and something terrible happens. But I had to know. I had to see what was out there. I leaned forward slowly and pressed my eye against the small glass peephole. The hallway was completely empty. There was absolutely no one standing outside my door. The corridor stretched in both directions, dimly lit by those wall sconces, showing nothing but faded wallpaper and closed doors. But I knew with absolute certainty that those knocks had come from my door. Someone or something had been standing right where I was looking, close enough to touch the door, and now they were gone. I backed away from the door, my whole body shaking. My rational mind was trying to find an explanation. Maybe it was sound traveling from another room. Old buildings do weird things with acoustics. But I'd been standing right at the door when those knocks came, and I knew they were on my door specifically. I stood there in the dark room trying to decide what to do. Then the knocking came again, and this time I was close enough to feel the vibration through the door. 3 slow knocks. Whoever was out there wasn't giving up. "Who's there?" I called out, trying to make my voice sound strong even though I was terrified. No answer. Complete silence. I looked through the peephole again, and the hallway was still empty. Nothing. No one. I waited a full minute, watching through that tiny lens, but there was no movement, no shadow, nothing. I grabbed my phone and called the front desk. After 4 rings, Angela answered, her voice thick with sleep like I'd woken her up. "Front desk, this is Angela." I kept my voice low, almost whispering. "This is Lauren Hayes in room 412. Someone's knocking on my door, but when I look through the peephole, there's no one there." There was a long pause on the other end. Then Angela's voice came back completely different, now wide awake and tight with fear. "Lauren, listen to me very carefully. Do not open that door. I'm completely serious. Whatever you do, stay inside with everything locked." The fact that she used my first name made it feel personal, made it real. "Angela, what's out there? What's knocking on my door?" Another pause, and I could hear her breathing on the other end. "I don't know exactly what it is, but 6 months ago, the woman in your room called the front desk at 2:43 a.m. She reported the exact same thing, knocking with no one visible. She called back 8 minutes later and said she was going to open the door and confront whoever was playing games with her. That was the last anyone ever heard from her. When housekeeping checked on her the next morning, the room was empty, but still locked from the inside. All the deadbolts and chains were in place. Her suitcase was there, her phone, her wallet, her car keys, everything. But she was gone. My blood turned to ice. How is that even possible? If the room was locked from the inside, how could she leave? Angela's voice dropped even lower. That's exactly what the police asked. They investigated for 2 weeks. The hotel gave them complete access to everything, showed them all the electronic keycard logs. According to the records, no one entered that room after she checked in. No staff, no other guests, no one. The door was never unlocked from the outside, but somehow she vanished without taking anything and without unlocking the door herself. The police eventually said she must have left voluntarily somehow and staged everything, but they never found any evidence of where she went. Her family hired a private investigator and everything. She's still missing. I looked at my door with the chain and deadbolt engaged and the chair wedged under the handle. There are more than 3 hours until sunrise. What am I supposed to do until then? Angela gave me very specific instructions. Stay away from the door. Turn on every light in the room. Don't respond if the knocking continues. I'm going to come up to the 4th floor right now and walk through the hallway, but I'm not going to knock on your door or ask you to open it. If you see me through the peephole, don't open the door even for me. Just wait until 6 a.m. when the day shift comes on. Then you can leave safely. I wanted to demand she come let me out right now. Wanted to call the police. Wanted to do anything except stay in this room for 3 more hours. but something in Angela's voice told me she was giving me the best advice she could within limits I didn't understand. Okay, I'll wait. I hung up and turned on every single light in the room. The overhead lights, the bedside lamps, the bathroom light, everything. I flooded that room with as much brightness as possible. Then I sat on the bed with my back against the headboard, phone clutched in my hand, and I waited. About 15 minutes later, I saw movement through the peephole. Angela was walking slowly down the fourth-floor hallway with a flashlight, checking corners and doorways like she was searching for something. She looked absolutely terrified, constantly glancing over her shoulder. When she reached room 412, she stopped and looked directly at the peephole. Our eyes met for just a second through that tiny glass lens. She gave me a small nod, then continued down the hallway and disappeared around the corner. Whatever she'd been looking for, I don't think she found it. Or maybe she did and didn't want to tell me. At 3:30 a.m., the knocking started again, but this time it was completely different. Instead of 3 slow, deliberate knocks, it was frantic pounding. Bang, 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 bang. Like someone desperate and panicked trying to break through the door. It went on for 2 solid minutes, the door shaking in its frame, and I pressed myself against the far wall expecting it to burst open. Then it stopped. Sudden, complete silence. I checked the peephole one more time. Still nothing. No one there. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I sat on that bed with my back pressed against the headboard, watching the door, waiting for sunrise. Every minute felt like an hour. At 5:45 a.m., the sky outside my window finally started to get light. At 6:03 a.m., my phone rang with a call from an unknown local number. I answered it cautiously. Ms. Hayes, this is Detective Marcus Romano with the Savannah Police Department. I understand you stayed in room 412 at the Grandview Hotel last night. I need to speak with you about your experience as soon as possible. Can you come down to the station this morning? My mouth went completely dry. How do you know I was in that room? The detective explained that Angela had called the police around 3 a.m. after my phone call to the front desk. She'd filed an official report expressing serious concern for my safety and detailing how the hotel management had been deliberately placing solo female travelers in room 412 despite knowing about its disturbing history. Detective Romano had been investigating the May disappearance and was shocked to learn the hotel was still using that room. I checked out of the Grandview immediately without even asking for a refund. I just wanted out of that building. I met Detective Romano at the police station at 8 in the morning, and what he told me made me sick to my stomach. Over the past 8 years, 4 women had disappeared from room 412. All of them were solo travelers between the ages of 25 and 35, all checking in for multiple night stays. In every single case, the women had called the front desk between 2:30 and 3 a.m., reporting knocking on their doors with no one visible in the hallway. In every case, the women were found missing the next morning, with their rooms locked from the inside and all their belongings left untouched. The hotel had insisted these were unrelated incidents, just unfortunate coincidences of women who chose to leave for their own personal reasons. But Detective Romano knew 4 identical disappearances couldn't be coincidence. He'd been investigating, but couldn't get a warrant for a more thorough search without stronger evidence. The hotel had been cooperative on the surface, showing police their keycard access logs and security footage, but something didn't add up. My experience, combined with Angela's testimony about being pressured by management to book guests into that room, finally gave Detective Romano what he needed for a warrant. That same afternoon, police conducted an extensive search of room 412 and the surrounding structure. What they discovered changed everything. Hidden behind a false wall in the closet was an access panel that opened into a narrow space between the walls. This hidden passage was a service corridor from when the building was originally constructed in the 1890s. The passage connected several rooms on the 4th floor and led down to a staircase that descended all the way to the basement. In the basement, police found a locked storage room that had been converted into a living space. Inside were personal belongings from all 4 missing women: jewelry, ID cards, phones, clothing, and clear evidence that someone had been living in those hidden spaces, moving through the walls of the hotel completely undetected by guests and most staff. The hotel owner, A man named Gerald Sutton was arrested that evening. Under interrogation, he confessed to everything. He'd discovered the hidden passages shortly after purchasing the hotel 10 years earlier and had been using them to spy on guests, a sick, voyeuristic practice he'd developed over time. 8 years ago, a solo female traveler staying in room 412 had caught him emerging from the closet panel at 3 a.m. He'd panicked and attacked her, and she'd died during the struggle. Instead of calling police and admitting what happened, he'd hidden her body in the walls and disposed of it later on his rural property outside the city. Something had broken in his mind after that first murder, and he'd repeated it 3 more times over the years. He specifically targeted solo women with limited social connections who wouldn't be immediately missed, always using the same method. He'd knock on the door from the hallway, then retreat quickly into the hidden passages. He'd watch through a concealed peephole to see how the victim reacted. If they called the front desk or seemed too alert and cautious, he'd abort his plan. If they seemed confused and vulnerable, he'd wait for them to get back in bed, then emerge from the closet panel when they were distracted and disoriented. The rooms appeared locked from the inside because Gerald would re-engage all the locks after taking his victims into the hidden passages. Angela had suspected something was wrong for months after the May disappearance, but had been too frightened to speak up, knowing she'd lose her job and possibly be blamed. Being ordered to put another solo woman in room 412 had finally pushed her past her breaking point. She'd warned me and then called the police, risking everything because she couldn't live with herself if another woman disappeared. Gerald Sutton was eventually sentenced to 4 consecutive life terms without any possibility of parole. The 4 missing women's bodies were recovered from his property, and their families finally got the closure they desperately needed, even though the pain would never fully heal. The Grandview Hotel was shut down permanently, and the building was later demolished. Angela left the hospitality industry completely, traumatized by her unwitting role in what had happened. She eventually became an advocate for workers' rights, speaking about the impossible position employees are put in when they're pressured to prioritize business interests over safety. I couldn't go back to travel blogging immediately. I took 3 months off and stayed with my sister Beth in Minneapolis, processing everything that had happened and dealing with the trauma of knowing I'd come within hours of becoming Gerald's 5th victim. The only reason I survived was because Angela had the courage to warn me, and I had the sense to take her warning seriously, even though it sounded irrational. My family wanted me to quit traveling and get what they called a normal job, but I realized that would mean letting Gerald take something else from me. I eventually went back to blogging, but with a completely different focus. I started investigating and writing about hotel safety, workers' rights in hospitality, and the ways hotels sometimes prioritize profit and reputation over guest protection. My blog post about the Grandview Hotel went viral and started important conversations about traveler safety. I now include detailed safety assessments in every hotel review, looking at security measures, staff responsiveness, and whether employees seem empowered to report concerns. Detective Romano told me the case revealed a disturbing industry pattern. Guest complaints about feeling unsafe or experiencing strange incidents are often dismissed as overreactions or attempts to get refunds. Hotels are financially motivated to minimize problems to protect their online reviews and reputations. Several guests had complained about room 412 over the years, reporting strange noises, feelings of being watched, and items that seemed moved when they returned. Management had dismissed everything as normal quirks of an old building. Those guests had been detecting Gerald's presence, but their valid instincts were invalidated by a business model that valued reputation over reality. I now teach workshops about travel safety, especially for solo women. I emphasize trusting your instincts, listening to staff warnings even when they seem strange, and never worrying about appearing paranoid if something feels wrong. I tell everyone about Angela, about a young worker who broke the unspoken hospitality rule that says never worry the guests, never make the hotel look bad, always smile and pretend everything is perfect. She told me the truth, and that truth saved my life. Here's what I need everyone watching this to understand. Free upgrades sometimes come with hidden costs. If something seems too good to be true, Ask questions. If a hotel employee gives you a warning that sounds strange or superstitious, take it seriously. They know things about that property that you don't, and if they're risking their job to warn you, there's a genuine reason. Your safety matters more than being polite or not making a fuss. I had every logical reason to dismiss Angela's warning as crazy or as part of ghost story marketing. Any of those dismissive choices would have led to a very different outcome. The 4 women who died weren't careless or naive. They were simply unlucky enough to stay in that room before someone like Angela found the courage to speak up, and they made the understandable mistake of opening their door when someone knocked. If this story made you think differently about travel safety, hit that subscribe button right now and leave a comment sharing your thoughts. When you travel, research beyond pretty photos and positive reviews. Check recent reviews specifically for safety concerns. Look at how hotels treat solo travelers. Pay attention to how staff interact with you. Are they genuinely helpful or just following corporate scripts? Do they seem empowered to address problems or afraid of management? These observations tell you whether a property truly cares about guest safety or just about appearances. And remember, if someone warns you about danger, even if it sounds impossible or irrational, honor that warning. Your life might depend on taking seriously what others risk everything to tell you. Thank you for watching, and please, stay safe out there.